So I'm going to loop back around and go more broad brush this morning, talking about the 4 protective meditations as a whole and a little bit how they work together. There's a talk that Ajahn Geoff gives in this same Meditations 4 that I read from, the walking meditation. And he talks about the guardian meditations, and that's these 4 guardian meditations that we've been studying. And so I'll read actually the talk after this Guardian's Meditation talk is actually really good as well. It's about training. And then I'll end with a Ajahn Chah reading on general training. So it's nice to tie it together, and when we know how to use these practices and when we should use them. And then probably tomorrow I'll go back into more metta meditation talks, and that'll be the day before One Pra tomorrow. So this is called Guardian Meditations from Meditations 4, page 89. It's a talk given on June 8th, 2007. If you've ever opened a book to look at dependent co-arising, your first impulse was probably to close the book because the topic is so complex. But actually there are some good basic lessons you can learn even from your first impressions. The primary factor is ignorance. That's what starts suffering in motion. When you replace the ignorance with knowledge, that cuts the chain of causes and conditions leading to suffering. So it's good to know precisely what kind of knowledge is called for here, knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. This is why right view is always given as the first factor in the Noble Eightfold Path. It starts with conviction in your actions, that your actions are real, that they really do have results, and that the quality of the results is determined by the quality of the mental state engendering the action. It's within this context that the Four Noble Truths make sense. After all, suffering is a result of a particular mental action, or a series of mental actions, craving and ignorance being primary. If mental actions didn't have an impact on your life, the Four Noble Truths would be meaningless. This, of course, directs us to where we have to practice. We've got to train the mind. Notice that each of the Four Noble Truths entails a particular duty, each of which is a skill to be mastered. You're trying to comprehend suffering so that you can let go of its cause. You develop the path so you can realize the end of suffering. Those are the duties you have to master as skills. This is why in the Buddha's teaching there's no big controversy over sudden versus gradual awakening. The kind of knowledge we're developing here, like any skill, is incremental. The more you work on it, the more sensitive you get. Ultimately, you reach a point where you really understand. The image in the text is of the continental shelf off of India. It's a gradual slope, and then there's a sudden drop-off. It's not all or nothing. The build-up is important, because the build-up is what makes you more sensitive. Only when you're really sensitive can you have those aha moments that really go deep into the mind, open things up, change your perspective on everything. This is why the Eightfold Path is not only composed of right view, but also other factors that help to increase your ability to know, to learn, to be aware of the mind, and to help you let go of the factors that obscure the mind. That's why one of the Buddha's terms for the path is developing and letting go. You're developing clarity of mind. You're letting go of the things that obscure and defile the mind. So that's the big, important factor in the chain of causes and conditions. Whether you're operating out of the right view of the Four Noble Truths or the wrong view of ignorance. The other point that will immediately strike you if you look at dependent co-arising is how many of the factors come prior to sensory contact. Things don't just begin with sensory contact. You bring a whole load of preconditions to any experience, and working on those preconditions is what's going to make all the difference. For instance, building right off of ignorance, there are what they call fabrications. The way you breathe, if it's done in ignorance, can contribute to suffering. That's physical fabrication. Verbal fabrication consists of the way you direct your thoughts to things and then comment on them. If this is done in ignorance, it's going to lead to suffering. Mental fabrication consists of perceptions and feelings. If you fabricate these things out of ignorance, they're going to lead to suffering as well. This is why a large part of the practice is focused on the issue of perception, the way you label things, how they fit into the larger picture of your thoughts. And this is why the Buddha didn't just sit people down and say, okay, just be present, just be in the present moment and don't think about anything else. He would often start his instructions by leading up to an understanding of why we're in the present moment, exactly what we're trying to look for in the present moment, what we're going to do about it when we see it. This is why there are so many analogies and images in the canon. They give you a framework for understanding what you're doing. And again, many of the images and analogies have to do with skills. Being a skillful meditator is like being a skillful cook, carpenter, or archer. There's a skillful way to perceive. There's even a skillful way to feel. Feeling comes not only from raw data, streaming in from the outside, but also from an element of fabrication and mental impulse. A physical impulse comes up your nerves, and your mind processes it before you're really conscious of it. What we're trying to do as we meditate is to learn how to bring some of these unconscious processes into the light of day. And a central element in these processes is the way you perceive things. You can consciously train yourself to perceive things in more useful, more skillful ways. There's a series of meditations called guardian meditations, which are very helpful in using skillful perceptions to get the mind in the right mood, in the right attitude, with the right understanding as you come into the present moment. You'll often find, as you're sitting here meditating on the breath, that the problem is not with the breath. It's with the mental baggage you're carrying with you. So you want to open up the bags and throw out all the unnecessary weight. There's an image they have in Thailand of the old woman who carries around a huge bundle of straw on her back. She's always bent over because she's carrying so much straw. People ask her why she doesn't put it down, and she says, well, someday this straw is going to come in handy, so I'm carrying it for the day I'll need it. So she carries it wherever she goes. Of course, there are many other things she could be carrying, but she can't because the straw is such a huge bundle, and of course it's pretty useless. So you want to look into your baggage and see how much straw you're carrying around so that you can lighten your load. Then you can replace it with better things, things that really will be useful. And the guardian meditations are a good way of sorting things out in your baggage. The first guardian meditation is recollection of the Buddha, keeping in mind his awakening, reflecting on it as a central event in the history of the world. The fact of his awakening shows that through human effort, true happiness can be found. It's an important point to keep in mind because so much of our modern culture tries to say, hey, you can't have an ultimate and deathless happiness, but you can have the happiness that comes from our egg beater with an MP3 player built right into the handle, or whatever. In other words, they keep you focused on what you can get out of buying their stuff, which is all pretty miserable. How many articles in The Onion are based on this? Woman discovers that buying new mop did not deliver the fulfillment that she hoped it would bring to her life. In other words, our culture keeps us aiming pretty low. Go for the quick fix. Go for something that doesn't require any effort or skill on your part, just money. They dress it up, make it sound like you'll be really happy if you buy their stuff. So it's important to keep in mind that there was someone in the past who found true happiness, and it was through his own efforts. And, as he said, it wasn't because he was a special god or anything. It was simply through developing qualities of mind that we can all develop: man, woman, child, lay or ordained, ardency, resolution, heedfulness. We all have these qualities to some extent. It's simply a matter of developing them. The same with virtue, concentration, discernment. These are things we all have to some extent. It's simply a matter of learning how to make them all around. So when you're tempted to go for the quick but short happiness, remind yourself, the Buddha says that true happiness is possible and that it can be gained through human effort. Do you want to live your life without exploring that possibility? Or do you just want to write it off? In this way, Keeping the Buddha's awakening in mind is an important perception, an important perspective to bring to all of your experiences. And there are many other things that you can gain by thinking about the Buddha's life, the sort of person he was, his last message to be heedful. He was the sort of person who had already found true happiness. He didn't need to gain anything from anyone else, but he went out and he taught for 45 years, walking around northern India. Wherever there was someone who was ready to be taught, ready to benefit from his teachings, he would walk there. That's the kind of person who taught this Dhamma. Not someone who was running a retreat center and needed to bring in cash, and who was willing to say anything to attract clientele, but someone acting totally out of pure motives, pure compassion. So that's the kind of practice we're practicing as we follow his path, and it's ennobling for us to practice in that lineage. So these are good perceptions to hold in mind, especially when you're getting discouraged or tempted to give up on the practice, or if you think, well, maybe I'm not up to this. Remember that the essential qualities for awakening are qualities that everybody can develop, but we have to develop them ourselves. We can't depend on anyone outside to come and do it for us. That's the other part of the message of the Buddha's life, the part that keeps you on your toes. The second guardian meditation is goodwill. You want to bring an attitude of goodwill to everybody around you. When the Buddha talked about goodwill in the Brahmaviharas, it wasn't ordinary, everyday goodwill. It was goodwill all around, without limit. That's not easy. It doesn't come naturally to us. We tend to have goodwill for certain people and not so much for other people. As a result, our actions can very easily turn unskillful. It's very easy to do harm to the people we don't care about or who aren't on our list of people who deserve to be happy. And it's also easy to drop people from the list when the mood strikes us, to treat even the people we love in unskillful ways. So to protect yourself from that kind of unskillful action, you've got to learn how to make your goodwill all around, 24/7. That doesn't mean creating a cloud machine that sends out billowing clouds in all directions to hide your lack of goodwill. When you start spreading thoughts of goodwill, first you spread it to people who are easy, the people you already love and like, and then to people who are harder. Even though you don't like them, you can ask yourself, why would I not want this person to be happy? After all, when people aren't happy, they can do cruel and miserable things. The world would be a better place if everyone could find true happiness inside, regardless of whether you like them or not, or whether they've been good or not, or whether they're on your list of the deserving. And besides, who made you the National Bureau of Standards? Why should your likes and dislikes rule the world? In this way, goodwill meditation is meant to be a challenge for you to really think through why you'd want to limit your goodwill, and to remind yourself of why it's good to have goodwill for everyone. You can't act on harmful intentions if your goodwill is all around. This is why it's called a guardian meditation. The third guardian meditation is of the foulness of the body. A lot of people don't like this one. If we took a poll of meditators here in the West, we'd probably find that this is at the bottom of the list of popular meditation topics, yet it's very useful. Some people say, hey, I've already got a negative body image. Why do you want me to make it even more negative? Well, there's healthy negative body image as well as an unhealthy one. Unhealthy is when you see that your body is ugly, but other people have beautiful bodies. Healthy is when you see that we all have the same garbage inside ourselves. Nobody's liver could win the Miss Universe contest. This contemplation is helpful because it's a guardian. It protects you from inappropriate lust. There are so many people out there you could feel lust for, but if you acted on it, you'd create a lot of trouble. Even if you're not practicing celibacy, you need a way to guard yourself against that kind of vagrant lust. So the next time you see an attractive person, instead of weaving all sorts of narratives from the ideas and associations you've developed around beauty, it's good to teach yourself other narratives, other associations. Right under the skin, what have you got? You've got all these blood vessels and nerves and uck. And as you go deeper, it gets more yuck. And what do you gain out of lusting for that? Why would you want it? This sort of contemplation really goes against the grain, which is one of the reasons why it's useful to reflect on over and over and over again. Ajahn Mahabua keeps making the point. Don't count the number of times you reflected on the foulness of the body. Just keep doing it until it's done its job. After all, our lusting after the human body is what led us to be born. This is what keeps us wanting to come back, and it makes us do really stupid things. So this contemplation is a useful tool to have in your arsenal. It's a useful new set of perceptions to develop. Our perceptions of beauty are dangerous, so it's good to learn how to see that beautiful bodies are not really beautiful. All you have to do is look inside a little bit, and you see all kinds of stuff that can kill the lust if you really allow yourself to look at the body as a whole, and not just at the few parts you tend to focus on as being attractive. The fourth guardian meditation is recollection of death. For most people, this is a pretty disturbing and depressing, but it's meant to be used in a way that's inspiring, that helps us to follow the path beyond death to the deathless. Remind yourself that we've got this practice that allows us to prepare for death and transcend it. Have you fully developed it? Are you really prepared? And the answer is almost always no. Okay, then, you've got work to do. This is a good antidote for laziness. There's a great sutta where the Buddha talks about 8 reasons for laziness and 8 reasons for being diligent. And for both lists, the external conditions are the same. You can be lazy because you're feeling sick. You can be lazy because you're about to go on a trip. You can be lazy because you've just gotten back from a trip. You can be lazy because you just recovered from an illness. You can be lazy because you haven't eaten enough. You can be lazy because you've eaten too much. But you can also use those circumstances to remind yourself, I don't have much time. When you just recover from an illness, instead of saying, I'm still weak, I'm not quite well yet, let me rest, you remind yourself, I could get sick again. I could have a relapse, but at least now I've got some strength. Let me give this strength to the practice. If you haven't eaten enough, remind yourself, the body is light. I'm not spending all that time and energy digesting my food, so I've got more energy now for the practice. You've got the right conditions for sitting very quietly, very still. So your attitude is what's going to make the difference between whether the circumstances you've got right now are reasons for laziness or reasons for diligence. When you remind yourself that you don't know how much time you've got, it should stir you to action, so that when the time comes, when you really do have to go, you're ready, prepared. You've got the concentration, you've got the power of discernment, you've got the strength of mind to deal with whatever comes your way. If you sit around saying, please may I not die, please may I not die, someday you'll still have to die no matter how much you plead. A wiser attitude would be, please may I be ready when the time comes. May I have the strength to deal with any difficulty that might come my way. Then you realize that this is something you have in your power, to work on those strengths. After all, we've got the example of how the Buddha died. This is why these two recollections, recollection of the Buddha and recollection of death, go well together. The Buddha showed you how you can prepare. You look at the way he died. One last trip through all the jhanas. He died with no suffering at all and gained total release. It's possible for a human being to do this. If you think that comparing yourself to the Buddha is too much of a stretch, think about the members of the Sangha. You can read the verses of the elder monks and the elder nuns. Some of them were pretty miserable, total losers in meditation at first, and yet they were able to pull themselves together. They could do it. You can do it. So these 4 contemplations are guardian meditations to bring wisdom into your perception of things, the labels and ideas you bring to your experience. The more you develop them, the better the set of associations, the better the set of narratives you bring to, say, just the fact you're breathing, or the fact you're seeing, hearing, tasting, or touching things in the present moment. In other words, what you bring into the present moment is going to make all the difference. This is why we train the mind. This is why we practice, so that when the time comes to perform, you can perform well in a way that doesn't lead to suffering. You bring knowledge into the equation so that no matter which factor of dependent co-arising you're looking at, whether it's feelings, contact, craving, clinging, or whatever, you can untangle the conditions for suffering and replace them with conditions that lead to the end of suffering. So learn how to develop these topics along with the breath. They help put the whole practice into the right narrative, into the right perspective, and they protect you so that you aren't constantly causing suffering for yourself and the people around you. That's the best protection there is. And then I'll move on to the next talk. It's quite a short talk, actually. Cleanliness is next to mindfulness, from February 10th, 2006. There's a famous poem in Thailand about the amorous adventures of two men trying to outdo each other in terms of the number of women they can sleep with. It's pretty light entertainment, but one of its most interesting passages is when one of the men is entering the apartments of a woman he's enamored with. He opens the door and there's a folding screen painted with a story. At that point, the poem drops the story of the man and the woman, goes into the story of the screen, describing not only the events depicted on the screen, but also how they're depicted. It turns out the woman herself had painted the screen. So as the man goes from panel to panel, he not only learns the story, but also gets a very good sense of what kind of person she is by the way she handled the scenes, how she painted the characters. So even though you haven't met her yet in the poem, by the time you finish the story in the screen, you know her through her handiwork. This is a principle you find throughout Thai culture. Back in the old days, people would learn a lot about each other by the way they did things, by the things they made. If you were a young man and wanted to appeal to a young woman, you'd carve a pole for her to carry over her shoulder when carrying gifts to the monastery. And she'd get a very good sense of what kind of person you were, both by the fact that you made a pole for that purpose and by your handiwork in the way you carved it. Most of us nowadays would be hopeless in a situation like that. We're not used to making things. This is one of our problems as meditators. We don't have many physical skills. We haven't learned the mental qualities that go with developing a physical skill. So we've got to go back and learn from scratch. This is why the training is not just a matter of sitting and walking. It's a whole lifetime. All the things you do throughout the day are opportunities to develop mindfulness, alertness, learning how to be meticulous in what you do. There's the saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. It may not be absolutely true, but it's close. Ajahn Lee devotes almost a whole Dhamma talk to the topic of cleanliness. The title of the talk is Reflection on Virtue, or Recollection of Virtue. But a good 2/3 of the talk is about being clean. That's an important part of virtue. In other words, while you're living here, don't think that the day-to-day facts of eating or having a place to sleep are minor matters to hurry through so you can get to the real business of meditating. If you're sloppy with things outside, you're going to be sloppy with your meditation. It's a basic principle. You want to learn how to be meticulous, clean, neat, alert in all the things you do. In that way, the activities become not a chore to be disposed of as quickly as possible, or something just getting in the way of your meditation. They become part of the meditation. After all, the word for meditation is bhavana. It means to develop. You're developing qualities of mind, and the mind that cleans your room is the same mind that tries to clean itself out. If it's sloppy in cleaning the room, it's going to be sloppy in cleaning itself out. So you've got to take these things seriously. I remember Ajahn Fuang telling me about his time with Ajahn Mun, how Ajahn Mun was extremely meticulous, very clean about everything. Even living out in the forest in the dry season when there was a lot of dust, his hut and everything around it was very neat, very clean. Everything was in its right place. Even the rags he used to wipe off his feet, he always kept them well washed. If they got torn, he would sew them up. He didn't let anything go to waste. So try to have this attitude in all your activities. When you're training the mind is there not only when you meditate. It's the same mind that goes through the day, what you do, what you say, how you do your chores. Those are the areas where you show the qualities of your mind. Those are the areas where they're also being developed. If you're developing sloppy, lazy habits in your day-to-day chores, those habits are going to get in the way of your meditation. If you learn to be meticulous and neat, those habits will come help your meditation, because the mind is like a large tree. Some trees, like banana trees, have only one shoot at the end. They grow very fast but don't give much shade. The trees that give a lot of shade are the ones that grow lots of branches. There's a lot to be covered in the training of the mind. It's not just a matter of mastering one single technique. I was once asked the question, how does someone who's mastered meditation overcome the problem of pride? After all, you've been able to master this technique. You're pretty sharp. Well, that happens mainly in places where everything is reduced to a meditation technique, in meditation centers where the people who meditate don't have anything else to do. Everything gets channeled into that one shoot at the end of the banana tree. Things may happen fast, but there's no shade. It's an incomplete training. The complete training has to go all around. It has to deal with the way you treat other people, how you handle difficult situations. Your whole life is part of the training, and in the course of the whole life aspect of the training, you need to learn how to see how you've been sloppy, how you've been stupid, how you've been ignorant, how you've been thoughtless and careless. If you don't see those things, you're not going to learn anything. The experience is chastening instead of pride-inducing. When the training is complete, every aspect of the mind has been trained so that you're skilled at all kinds of activities with an attitude nicely balanced between humility and pride. Once, during my very first year with Ajahn Fuang, the time came for the Katina, which was the big event of the year. Lots of people were going to come from Bangkok. Some of them would have to be housed for a night or two before the Katina, and everybody would have to be fed. I had a dream a few nights before they came that Ajahn Fuang had a huge closet with lots of different hats. He would go into the closet and come out with one hat on, then go back in and come out with a different hat on. And sure enough, in the preparation for the Katina, they had to put up bamboo sheds and they had to arrange for extra kitchen areas, lots of different tasks, and he was good at supervising them all. As later he told me, practicing Dhamma is not just being good at sitting with your eyes closed. It involves learning how to be skillful in everything you do. This attitude that wants to be skillful, that's what's going to see you through lots of different problems. If you don't give a damn about things outside, your mind is going to be a don't give a damn kind of mind inside as well. It gets apathetic, careless. But if you make up your mind that whatever chore falls to you, you're going to try to do it skillfully, then you develop what are called the 4 bases for success: the desire to do it skillfully, the persistence that sticks with it till you've mastered it, intentness, paying a lot of attention to what you're doing, and analysis, using your powers of discernment to see what's not yet right, trying to figure out how to get around problems, how to solve them. This 4th factor also involves ingenuity, all the active qualities of the mind. The texts talk about these 4 bases of success, specifically in conjunction with concentration. But a common teaching all over Thailand is that if you want to succeed at anything, you've got to develop these qualities of mind and apply them to whatever you have to do to succeed. And regardless of what areas of your life you develop them in, you can take them and apply them to other areas of your life as well. To see every aspect of your life as an opportunity to train the mind. If you want to develop good, strong powers of concentration, it's not just what you do while you're sitting with your eyes closed. It's how you tackle any activity. Learning how to be focused on that activity, learning to be strict with the mind when it starts wandering off. That way the mind is right there. You learn how to keep it right there no matter what you're doing. And when the time comes to sit down with your eyes closed, well, you're right there. You don't have to go chasing the mind down. So try to see the practice as a seamless whole. The word bhavana, as I said, is to develop. You can develop your mind in any situation. Don't think that the important insights are going to come only when you're sitting with your eyes closed. There are many references to this point in the canon. One nun's mind finally came to a good solid concentration while she was washing her feet, and the poem in which she tells of how this happened is interesting. After she washes her feet, she goes into her hut and does all the things you're told to do in the Vinaya. She checks the bed first before she sits down on it, and then she takes a pin and pulls the wick out of the lamp to pull out the light. And as soon as the fire went out, she said that was the moment of her awakening. She said the liberation of awareness was like the liberation of the fire. So it's not only when you're sitting with your eyes closed that important things can occur to the mind, important insights can come, or that the mind can gather into one. It's amazing. Sometimes the mind can get really concentrated while you're just doing a chore if you approach the chore with the proper respect. So remember that this tree of ours has lots of branches and they're all growing at once. Things may seem slow because they're all growing at once, but at least you're getting a tree that offers really good shade once it's grown. That's what it means for the mind to be well trained, trained all around. You can watch the mind in its activities, so you want to make sure that it's well trained in everything it does. And then I'll end with this very short talk, reading from Ajahn Chah. This is from the Collected Works of Ajahn Chah. Collected Teachings, page 255, a talk called Just Do It. Just keep breathing in and out like this. Don't be interested in anything else. It doesn't matter even if someone is standing on their head with their bum in the air. Don't pay it any attention. Just stay with the in-breath and the out-breath. Concentrate your awareness on the breath. Just keep doing it. Don't take up anything else. There's no need to think about gaining things. Don't take up anything at all. Simply know the in-breath and the out-breath. The in-breath and the out-breath. Bud on the in-breath, To on the out-breath. Just stay with the breath in this way until you are aware of the in-breath and aware of the out-breath, aware of the in-breath and aware of the out-breath. Be aware in this way until the mind is peaceful, without irritation, without agitation, merely the breath going out and coming in. Let your mind remain in this state. You don't need a goal yet. This state is the first stage of practice. If the mind is at ease, if it's at peace, it will be naturally aware. As you keep doing it, the breath diminishes, becomes softer. The body becomes pliable. The mind becomes pliable. It's a natural process. Sitting is comfortable. You're not dull. You don't nod. You're not sleepy. The mind has a natural fluency about whatever it does. It is still. It is at peace. And then when you leave the samadhi, you say to yourself, wow, what was that? You recall the peace that you've just experienced, and you never forget it. The things which follow along with us are called sati, the power of recollection, and sampajanya, self-awareness. Whatever we say or do, wherever we go, on alms round or whatever, in eating the meal, washing our alms bowl, then be aware of what it's all about. Be constantly mindful. Follow the mind. When you're practicing walking meditation, have a walking path, say from one tree to another, about 50 feet in length. Walking Jongrom is the same as sitting meditation. Focus your awareness. Now I'm going to put forth effort. With strong recollection and self-awareness, I'm going to pacify my mind. The object of concentration depends on that person. Find what suits you. Some people spread metta to all sentient beings, then leading with their right foot, walk at a normal pace, using the mantra Buddho in conjunction with the walking, continually being aware of that object. If the mind becomes agitated, stop, calm the mind, and then resume walking, constantly self-aware. Aware at the beginning of the path, aware at every stage of the path, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Make this knowing continuous. This is a method, focusing on walking Jongrom. Walking Jongrom means walking to and fro. It's not easy. Some people see us walking up and down and think we're crazy. They don't realize that walking Jongrom gives rise to great wisdom. Walk to and fro. If you're tired, then stand still at your mind. If you're tired, then stand and still your mind. Focus on making the breathing comfortable. When it is reasonably comfortable, then switch the attention to walking again. The postures change by themselves. Standing, walking, sitting, lying down. They change. We can't just sit all the time, stand all the time, or lie down all the time. Because we have to spend our time with these different postures, make all 4 postures beneficial. This is the action. We just keep doing it. It's not easy. To make it easy to visualize, take this glass and set it down here for 2 minutes. When the 2 minutes are up, then move it over there for 2 minutes. Then move it over here for 2 minutes. Keep doing that. Do it again and again until you start to suffer, until you doubt, until wisdom arises. What am I thinking about, lifting a glass backwards and forwards like a madman? The mind will think in its habitual way according to the phenomenon. It doesn't matter what anyone says. Just keep lifting that glass every 2 minutes, okay? Don't daydream, not 5 minutes. As soon as 2 minutes are up, then move it over here. Focus on that. This is the matter of action. Looking at the in-breaths and out-breaths is the same. Sit with your right foot resting on your left leg. Sit straight. Watch the inhalation to its full extent until it completely disappears in the abdomen. When the inhalation is complete, then allow the breath out until the lungs are empty. Don't force it. It doesn't matter how long or short or soft the breath is. Let it be just right for you. Sit and watch the inhalation and the exhalation. Make yourself comfortable with that. Don't allow your mind to get lost. If it gets lost, then stop. Look to see where it has got to, why it is not following the breath. Go after it and bring it back. Get it to stay with the breath, and, without doubt, one day you will see the reward. Just keep doing it. Do it as if you won't gain anything, as if nothing will happen, as if you don't know who's doing it, but keep doing it anyway. Like rice in the barn. You take it out and sow it in the fields, as if you were throwing it away. You sow it throughout the fields, without being interested in it, and yet it sprouts. Rice plants grow up. You transplant it, and you've got sweet green rice. That's what it's about. This is the same. Just sit there. Sometimes you might think, why am I watching the breath so intently? Even if I didn't watch it, it would still keep going in and out. Well, you'll always find something to think about. That's a view. It is an expression of the mind. Forget it. Keep trying over and over again and make the mind peaceful. Once the mind is at peace, the breath will diminish, the body will become relaxed, the mind will become subtle. They will be in a state of balance until it will seem as if there is no breath, but nothing happens to you. When you reach this point, don't panic. Don't get up and run out because you think you've stopped breathing. It just means that your mind is at peace. You don't have to do anything. Just sit there and look at whatever is present. Sometimes you may wonder, hey, am I breathing? This is the same mistake. It is the thinking mind. Whatever happens, allow things to take their natural course, no matter what feeling arises. Know it, look at it, but don't be deluded by it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Do it often. After the meal, air your robe on a line and get straight out onto the walking meditation path. Keep thinking, Buddho, Buddho. Think it all the time that you're walking. Concentrate on the word Buddho as you walk. Wear the path down. Wear it down until it's a trench and it's halfway up your calves or up to your knees. Just keep walking. It's not just strolling along in a perfunctory way, thinking about this and that for a length of the path, and then going up into your hut and looking at your sleeping mat. How inviting! Then lying down and snoring away like a pig. If you do that, you won't get anything from the practice at all. Keep doing it until you're fed up and see how far that laziness goes. Keep looking until you come to the end of laziness. Whatever it is you experience, you have to go all the way through it before you overcome it. It's not as if you can just repeat the word peace to yourself and then as soon as you sit, you expect peace will arise, like at the click of a switch, and when it doesn't, you give up, lazy. If that's the case, you'll never be peaceful. It's easy to talk about and hard to do. It's like monks who are thinking of disrobing, saying, "Rice farming doesn't seem so difficult to me. I'd be better off as a rice farmer." They start farming without knowing about cows or buffaloes, harrows or plows, nothing at all. They find out that when you talk about farming, it sounds easy, but when you actually try it, you get to know exactly what the difficulties are. Everyone would like to search for peace in that way. Actually, peace does lie right there, but you don't know it yet. You can follow after it. You can talk about it as much as you like, but you won't know what it is. So, do it. Follow it until you know and pace with the breath, concentrating on the breath using the mantra Buddho, just that much. Don't let the mind wander off anywhere else. At this time, have this knowing. Do this. Study just this much. Just keep doing it in this way. If you start thinking that nothing is happening, just carry on anyway. Just carry on regardless and you will get to know the breath. Okay? So give it a try. If you sit in this way, the mind gets the hang of it. The mind will reach an optimum, just right state. When the mind is peaceful, the self-awareness arises naturally. Then if you want to sit right through the night, you will feel nothing, because the mind is enjoying itself. When you get this far, when you're good at it, then you might find you want to give Dhamma talks to your friends until the cows come home. That's how it goes sometimes. It's like the time when poor Sang was still a postulant. One night he'd been walking Jongrom and then began to sit. His mind became lucid and sharp. He wanted to expound the Dhamma. He couldn't stop. I heard the sound of someone teaching over in that bamboo grove, really belting it out. I thought, is that someone giving a Dhamma talk? Or is it the sound of someone complaining about something? It didn't stop. So I got my flashlight and went over to have a look. I was right. There in the bamboo grove, sitting cross-legged in the light of a lantern, it was poor Sang, talking so fast I couldn't keep up. So I called out to him, "Poor Sang, have you gone crazy?" He said, "I don't know what it is. I just want to talk the Dhamma. I sit down and I've got to talk. I walk and I've got to talk. I've just got to expound the Dhamma all the time. I don't know where it's going to end." I thought to myself, when people practice the Dhamma, there's no limit to the things that can happen. So keep doing it. Don't stop. Don't follow your moods. Go against the grain. Practice when you feel lazy and practice when you feel diligent. Practice when you're sitting and practice when you're walking. When you lie down, focus on your breathing and tell yourself, "I will not indulge in the pleasure of lying down." Teach your heart in this way. Get up as soon as you awaken and carry on putting forth effort. Eating, tell yourself, "I eat this food, not with craving, but as medicine, to sustain my body for a day and a night, only in order that I may continue my practice." When you lie down, teach your mind. When you eat, teach your mind. Maintain that attitude constantly. If you're going to stand up, then be aware of that. If you're going to lie down, then be aware of that. Whatever you do, be aware. When you lie down, lie on your right side and focus on the breath using the mantra Buddho until you fall asleep. Then when you wake up, it's as if Buddho has been there all the time. It's not been interrupted. For peace to arise, there needs to be mindfulness all the time. Don't go looking at other people. Don't be interested in other people's affairs. Just be interested in your own affairs. When you do sitting meditation, sit straight. Don't lean your head too far back or too far forwards. Keep a balanced, just right posture like a Buddha image. Then your mind will be bright and clear. Endure for as long as you can before changing your posture. If it hurts, let it hurt. Don't be in a hurry to change your position. Don't think to yourself, "Oh, it's too much, take a rest." Patiently endure until the pain has reached a peak, then endure some more. Endure. Endure until you can't keep up the mantra Buddho. Then take the point where the hurt is as your object. Oh, pain, pain, real pain. You can make the pain your meditation object rather than Buddho. Focus on it continuously. Keep sitting. When the pain has reached its limit, see what happens. The Buddha said that pain arises by itself and disappears by itself. Let it die. Don't give up. Sometimes you may break out in a sweat, big beads as large as corn kernels rolling down your chest. But when you've passed through a painful feeling once, then you will know all about it. Keep doing it. Don't push yourself too much. Just keep steadily practicing. Be aware while you're eating. You chew and swallow. Where does the food go to? Know what foods agree with you and what foods disagree. Try gauging the amount of food. As you eat, keep looking, and when you think that after another 5 mouthfuls you'll be full, stop and drink some water, and you will have eaten just the right amount. Try it. See whether or not you can do it. But that's not the way we usually do it. When we feel full, we take another 5 mouthfuls. That's what the mind tells us. It doesn't know how to teach itself. The Buddha told us to keep watching as we eat. Stop 5 mouthfuls before you're full and drink some water, and it will be just right. If you sit or walk afterwards, then you won't feel heavy. Your meditation will improve. But we don't want to do it. We're full up and we take another 5 mouthfuls. That's the way that craving and defilement is. It goes a different way from the teachings of the Buddha. Someone who lacks a genuine wish to train their minds will be unable to do it. Keep watching your mind. Be vigilant with sleep. Your success will depend on being aware of the skillful means. Sometimes the time you go to sleep may vary. Some nights you have an early night and other times a late night. But try practicing like this. Whatever time you go to sleep, just sleep at one stretch. As soon as you wake up, get up immediately. Don't go back to sleep. Whether you sleep a little or a lot, just sleep at one stretch. Make a resolution that as soon as you wake up, even if you hadn't had enough sleep, you will get up, wash your face, and then start to walk Jongrom or sit meditation. Know how to train yourself in this way. It's not something you can know through listening to someone else. You will know through training yourself, through practice, through doing it. So I tell you to practice. This practice of the heart is difficult. When you're doing sitting meditation, then let your mind have only one object. Let it stay with the in-breath and the out-breath, and your mind will gradually become calm. If your mind is in turmoil, then it will have many objects. For instance, as soon as you sit, do you think of your home? Some people think of eating Chinese noodles. When you're first ordained, you feel hungry, don't you? You want to eat and drink. You think about all kinds of food. Your mind is going crazy. If that's what's going to happen, then let it. But as soon as you overcome it, then it will disappear. Do it. Have you ever walked Jongrom? What was it like as you walked? Did your mind wander? If it did, then stop and let it come back. If it wanders off a lot, then don't breathe. Hold your breath until your lungs are about to burst. It will come back by itself. No matter how bad it is, if it's racing around all over the place, then hold your breath. As your lungs are about to burst, your mind will return. You must energize the mind. Training the mind isn't like training animals. The mind is truly hard to train. Don't be easily discouraged. If you hold your breath, you will be unable to think of anything, and the mind will run back to you of its own accord. It's like the water in this bottle. When we tip it out slowly, then the water drips out. Drip, drip, drip. But then we tip the bottle up farther, the water runs out in a continuous stream, not in separate drops as before. Our mindfulness is similar. If we accelerate our efforts and practice in an even, continuous way, mindfulness will be uninterrupted like a stream of water. No matter whether we are standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, that knowledge is uninterrupted, flowing like a stream of water. Our practice of the heart is like this. After a moment, it's thinking of this and thinking of that. It is agitated, and mindfulness is not continuous. But whatever it thinks about, never mind. Just keep putting forth effort. It will be like the drops of water that become more frequent until they join up and become a stream. Then our knowledge will be encompassing. Standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, whatever you are doing, this knowing will look after you. Start right now. Give it a try. But don't hurry. If you just sit there watching to see what will happen, you'll be wasting your time. So be careful. If you try too hard, you won't be successful. But if you don't try at all, then you won't be successful either. leave it there for this morning. A few minutes if anybody has any questions or comments. Tony?
I'm wondering if you could talk about cleaning in a meticulous way, because I used to be really obsessed with cleaning to the extent that I wouldn't want to clean because it would be too much. Or I get irritated if my space wasn't clean. And I just want perspective.
It's good to clean. It's good to wipe the floor down, get all the corners with a damp rag and everything. But then if you get too military about it or whatever, if everything has to be folded in increasing patterns of squares or whatever. So it's like just getting it good enough, just getting it just right. But it's not good to, or if you clean and you get irritated by cleaning, then that might show that if you try to train your mind and clean your mind, you might get irritated as well. So the cleaning is showing you what it's going to be like when you train your mind. That could be as well. It's what's on the outside is going to reflect what it's going to be like on the inside. So it doesn't mean it's just because you're getting irritated by cleaning doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Cleaning is to be done, but the irritation to be looked at. It's not the cleaning that's making you irritated. There's something else that needs to be investigated. So the cleaning, you go against that, and then the cleaning is perhaps highlighting that for you. The practice isn't about shifting around everything in our external world so we never get irritated or never feel pain or never feel bad. We're not trying to do that with the practice. It's actually the opposite. All the practices we do, the precepts, the cleaning and everything, is to bring suffering out, to look at it. It's like Ajahn Chah saying with walking meditation, or lifting the cup up and down. You move it every 2 minutes until you start to suffer. Do it until you start to suffer over it, and then you can see the suffering. And then you start to see how the mind attaches to things and how it picks things up unskillfully. And that's the whole thing. So it's like cleaning your room can bring up suffering. And you might think, well, if I just stopped cleaning it, I would stop suffering. But that's actually it's like putting a Band-Aid on an infected wound. It won't actually heal it. It'll just hide it for a little bit. And, so I would say just keep cleaning your room and do it well, and then watch the suffering. Yeah.
I appreciated in Ajahn Chah's talk how there were a couple places, at the end he mentioned don't try too hard, but also if you don't try hard enough, you won't be successful either. And then when he was talking about working with pain in meditation, at first the way he was talking sounded like this really heroic and intense effort to just suffer through pain, but then at the end of it he says, but don't push yourself too hard, just do what you can gradually. And with regards to dealing with pain in meditation, I was wondering if you had any advice on how to work with it progressionally. Is it good to if you're meditating by yourself, set a timer so that when the pain arises, you can start the timer and say, I'm going to sit with it for...
No, that's not a good way to do it. Just don't injure yourself. The standard is to not injure yourself. So, yeah, you could sit with pain, but if it's you hear your kneecap falling out or something, then you don't just keep sitting with that, because that's the foolish way of sitting with pain. But if it's a dull pain that happens during meditation, but it's not injuring you, but it's just annoying, or an itch, and you're not able to sit with this itch, then you try to sit with that, and you can if you can't do Buddho anymore, you can focus on that. But all too many monks in the past have done things like try to force themselves into full lotus when their hips weren't flexible enough to do so, and then they end up the rest of their lives meditating in chairs. So you don't want to just push through pain in that way. But yeah, to push it a bit, not to just change postures immediately, but to actually be able to, or walking meditation, like when you get tired, to keep walking. He was talking about that. Don't just give up on the walking meditation as soon as you feel tired, because it will pass away once you do more walking. So it's not just pain, but it's working with tiredness, or working with anything that we don't like, anything that's unpleasant that comes up. Patience.